Avoidants will tell you they don't need anyone. They'll act independent, emotionally controlled, almost untouched by love. They don't double text. They don't over-explain. They don't chase. In fact, the more serious things start to feel, the more distant they become. So here's the contradiction no one talks about. When an avoidant truly loves you, when it's real for them, they do anything they almost never do for anyone else. And if you miss it, you'll think nothing changed. But if you recognize it, it changes everything. Because avoidants don't express love the way anxious people do. They don't suddenly become overly affectionate. They don't transform into someone emotionally dramatic. What they do is much quieter, much rarer, and much more vulnerable. Most people think love from an avoidant looks like effort, more calls, more time, more consistency. But that's not the real sign. The real sign is something that costs them their emotional armor. Something that goes directly against how they've survived their entire life. And here's the hard truth. If they've never done this with you, there's a reason. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what that one thing is, and whether what you had with them was comfort, attachment, or actual love. At first, it probably felt intense. They were present, interested, engaged, conversations flowed, the chemistry felt real, and just when you started relaxing into it, they shifted. Suddenly the energy changed, replies got shorter, plans became uncertain, warmth turned into distance. One week they felt close, the next week they felt miles away, hot and cold, in and out, closer then gone. You started replaying conversations in your head. Did I say too much? Did I push too hard? Did I scare them away? After moments of real connection, deep talks, vulnerability, intimacy, they pulled back the most. And that's what hurt. Because it wasn't nothing. It felt real. But their mixed signals made you question your own reality. When they were sweet, it felt safe. When they withdrew, it felt like punishment. You probably felt confused, wondering if they care, or if you're just an option. And the worst part, they never fully left. They stayed just close enough to keep hope alive, but distant enough to protect themselves. If you've lived that pattern, this isn't random behavior. There's a psychological reason behind it. To understand this, you have to stop seeing avoidance as cold, and start seeing them as protective. Avoidant attachment isn't about not having feelings. It's about learning, very early on, that depending on someone feels unsafe. This idea comes from attachment theory, originally developed by John Bowlby. The core principle is simple. The way we were responded to emotionally as children shapes how we attach as adults. For someone with avoidant attachment, closeness didn't always feel comforting. It may have felt overwhelming, unpredictable, or emotionally unavailable. So they adapted. They learned to rely on themselves, to downplay needs, to suppress vulnerability. Avoidants aren't heartless. They are protective. Their nervous system equates closeness with loss of control. When things start getting serious, their body doesn't interpret it as romance. It interprets it as risk. That's why after deep conversations or intimacy, they suddenly pull away. It's not always about you. It's about emotional exposure triggering old survival patterns. Dependency to them feels like weakness, and weakness feels dangerous. So instead of leaning in when feelings grow, they instinctively create space. Distance gives them relief. Control gives them safety. And unless you understand that this reaction is protective, not personal, you'll keep trying to fix something that was never about your worth in the first place. Now here's where it gets important. When an avoidant breaks this pattern, when they override that internal alarm system, that's when you know something real is happening. When avoidants don't love you, it's obvious in subtle ways. They keep a safe distance. They limit emotional exposure. They guard their time, their energy, and their heart. You may have noticed it yourself. The messages come late, or not at all. Plans feel casual, never serious. Moments of closeness are brief, fleeting, almost measured. It's not personal. It's a pattern they repeat, because it protects them. Closeness triggers their old fears, dependency, vulnerability, losing control. So they instinctively pull back. But here's where it gets complicated. Because when an avoidant truly loves you, something shifts. They break one of their biggest internal rules. Not in dramatic ways, not with grand gestures or constant words, but in the quiet, rare moments where they allow themselves to feel fully. It could be staying present when their instinct screams to leave. It could be sharing thoughts or feelings they usually keep buried. It could be letting their guard down without being forced. The point is this: they take a risk with their emotions, their control, their safety. And that risk is not something they take lightly. It's not casual. It's not something they do for just anyone. So if you notice these rare cracks in their armor, pay attention. Because they are meaningful. At this stage, you're not yet at the full reveal. The ultimate sign of love from an avoidant is still ahead. But this first layer already tells you something critical. When an avoidant goes beyond their protective instincts, when they bend their rules just a little, it signals a depth of care that very few people get to witness. And understanding this is the key to recognizing real love, not just comfort or habit. Here's the part most people miss: avoidants never willingly show emotional vulnerability, unless they truly love you. It's not about the gestures we usually associate with love. It's not about gifts, flowers, or thoughtful messages. It's not about texting first or constantly saying, "I miss you." Those things are easy to give. Even someone distant can do them. But real emotional exposure, that's rare. When an avoidant truly loves, they break a rule they've lived by for years. They allow themselves to be seen, fully, not the polished, safe version they show the world, not the detached mask they wear to feel secure, but the real messy, human parts they usually hide. They admit fear. They admit attachment. They admit they care. That's the raw honesty most people never get to see. It's terrifying for them, because vulnerability feels unsafe. Opening up means risking rejection, disappointment, or losing control. So when an avoidant lets you witness that, when they share their fears or show dependence, it's not casual. It's not for convenience. It's a sign of something deep, something genuine. And it's also why it feels so powerful to you. Because you see a side of them almost no one else does. A side that trusts you enough to drop the walls, even if just a little. This is the ultimate measure of love for an avoidant. Not what they do on the surface, but what they allow themselves to feel and share with you. If you've experienced this, even once, it's proof. Their love isn't casual, it's deliberate, rare, and real. And recognizing this truth changes everything about how you view them, and your relationship with them. Here's the part that most people don't want to hear. When an avoidant truly opens up, it's rare. It's intentional. It's a risk they take, because the feeling is bigger than their fear. But there's a critical distinction you need to understand. If you had to beg for that vulnerability, if you had to push, coax, or manipulate them into sharing, it wasn't love. It was pressure. Love from an avoidant is never forced. It doesn't come from guilt, manipulation, or obligation. It comes from a choice they make on their own, because they care enough to take the risk. When you're chasing someone's vulnerability, you're stepping into a pattern that avoids the real truth. You might feel temporary closeness, but it's not authentic. It's compliance, not connection. This is the reality check most people skips. Just because someone finally shares their feelings after repeated pressure doesn't mean they love you more. It means you broke through their boundaries. But boundaries are not emotions. True emotional exposure from an avoidant happens naturally, without need for begging, pleading, or games. It happens when they choose to lower their defenses, not because you forced the wall down. So the twist is this: your effort alone doesn't measure love. Their willingness to risk their emotional safety does.